Principal Matters Podcast, episode 457. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, along with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke. And Jen, this week we're going to be releasing an interview that I did with Karen Borchert, who's just an amazing leader of a group that's become a sponsor of the podcast, Alpaca. They are so focused on helping leaders know how to celebrate their teachers. And so I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. But I wanted to take a minute before we jump in. It's July 16th. And man, I'm just going to call an audible here because usually we do Q&As. And I admitted this last time that we recorded on the Monday Matters that you and I have pre-recorded as much of July as we could so that we could take this month off. And so I was going to have us do a quick Q&A here, but frankly, I'm just
you really are. You're changing things. Listeners, we have a doc open and he just deleted what we were going to talk about. It's gone. Like he's got the power of the pen over there.
July 16th. Why do I want to take a moment and unpack this really heavy question as we're stepping into July? So I was just like, no, we're just not going to do it.
You guys, he literally deleted it. We had a topic and he just wiped it away. So this is where I am as Will's co-host. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so what are we going to talk about? What do you got?
I think actually what we're going to do is just transition and just let listeners listen to Karen because there's a couple of other things I want to record with you, and I know that our time is limited, and so we're gonna do that. So, as you step into whatever you're experiencing, July 16th, I know by the time this comes out, Jen will just have been. You and I will just have gotten back from the United Conference. I will say this because it makes me happy, but I've tried to figure out how to combine like work and fun, and so can I tell you a quick story that's not on the script?
Well, nothing's on the script anymore. Well,
So,
do whatever you want.
So I was as I was planning the trip to Seattle, I'd been talking to my wife, Missy, about, does she want to go with me? Does she not? And sometimes she will go with me on work trips, but sometimes it's a pain because I'm just always, busy and hooked up and talking to people. So, I shared with her option A would be me. Here's what it looks like if Will goes. Option B would be, here's what it would look like if you go. But it would require us to get there a couple of days early, rent a car, drive up the coast of from Portland, and just try to do some sightseeing. And then she would do some just Missy time while I'm doing conference time, and then wrapping it up with a drive back to Portland. And it's funny, Jen, because as we were wrestling with this should we do it thing, I was sitting alone with my own thoughts, and I was like, well, I don't know. I'm going to work, but I've always kind of dreamed of like, could I get to the place in my work where I could just also take time to just enjoy being present and enjoy bringing Missy with me on these excursions too. And there was a thought in my mind that was like, well, maybe next year we could do something like that. And then I just paused and thought, why would I wait till next year if I have the possibility of doing this? So I told her, I'm going to try to sell you on why you should do this with me. And so I told her the very story I'm telling you, and she said, okay, I'll go.
Yeah, perfect.
So I'm reporting this pre actually having done it, but you're listening to this afterwards. So either Will's come back from this experience and it was like thumbs up, or Missy will never do that again with me. So we'll find out. But Jen, I know that people listening may have connected with us at the conference. They may be thinking about, how can I get you to my school, Jen, or to work with my people? So before we jump into the conversation with Karen, can you tell people how they can connect with you, especially if they want to invite you in to do some work with them?
Absolutely. Just jump on my website at jenschwanke.com. And there's a form at the bottom you can fill out, and it'll shoot me an email, and we can talk about how I can come and help you.
And if you also want to reach out to me for whether that's content from my new book or from some of the other previous work I've done with Pause, Breathe, Flourish or Principal Matters, my 8 hats for school leadership, you can always reach out to me as well at my website. And Jen, sometimes folks may be interested in connecting with us for coaching. or maybe they're interested in being part of mastermind. And so if that's something you're interested in, sometimes we have other associates in this work that we promote their work too. So you can reach out to us with any of those questions, and Jen and I are happy to point you in the right direction. And you can find all those resources through my website at williamdparker.com. But until next time, I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Karen Borchert, and thank you for doing what matters. Let's take a moment to thank our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. At Principal Matters, we talk a lot about leadership, culture, and building strong school communities. And this fall, I want to invite you to a powerful event where we will take those conversations even deeper. On September 24th through 25th, Aptigy's School CEO Conference in Little Rock, Arkansas, is bringing together K-12 leaders from across the country to explore one big question. How do we break through the noise and connect with families in today's competitive education landscape? This year's theme, What Parents Want, dives into research-driven strategies for parent engagement, enrollment growth, and building trust. You'll learn how to reach today's families with clarity and purpose, how to stand out from other districts, and how to use digital tools that actually work. Day one is hands-on workshops, and day two will be back-to-back keynote speakers, including one from me. With only 500 seats and no vendors, this is more than a conference. It's an experience. Learn more at aptigy.com/conference or visit schoolceo.com. I hope to see you there. Everyone talks about the power of data-driven instruction, but what does that actually look like? Look no further than IXL, the ultimate online learning and teaching platform for K-12. IXL gives you meaningful insights that drive real progress, and research can prove it. Studies in nearly all 50 states show that schools that use IXL outperform other schools on state tests. Educators who use IXL love that they can easily see how their school is performing in real time to make better instructional decisions. And IXL doesn't stop at just data. IXL also brings an entire ecosystem of resources for your teachers with a complete curriculum, personalized learning plans, and so much more. It's no wonder that IXL is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts. Ready to join them? Visit IXL.com/PM to get started.
You're listening to Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. This week, we're going to be talking about listening to your teachers with my special guest, Karen Borchert. Karen Borchert is the founder and CEO of Alpaca, a company with a mission to make it easier to support your teachers. Karen started off in secondary education, but most of her career is as an entrepreneur, helping to grow high-trust, highly aligned teams. She started Alpaca to combine her passion for education with her experience in building employee engagement, leadership, and management teams. Alpaca believes that asking teachers more about what they need, providing those things in delightful ways, and creating a way to show gratitude to teachers could change the way teachers feel about work. And Alpaca is on a mission to create the first employee culture platform built just for K-12 educators. Karen holds a bachelor's degree in secondary education and teaching from Wake Forest University and an MBA from Georgetown University's McDonough, is that correct? School of Business.
Yep, you got it.
Thanks. Before founding Alpaca, Karen had experience in operations, product management, and entrepreneurship. She held leadership roles at organizations such as Roca, Flywheel, and Election Systems and Software, and co-founded Keen Guides, a platform for multimedia tours. And her professional journey includes contributions in consulting and nonprofit. Today, Alpaca supports thousands of teachers across the country, and their unique model of semantic pulse surveys and turnkey teacher recognition programs offers a new way to support educators. And I'll just say at the front end, I know Karen because Alpaca has been a sponsor of Principal Matters and we've become friends. And so Karen Borchert, welcome to Principal Matters podcast. Why don't you fill in the gaps on that intro and tell listeners something else they may be surprised to know about you?
Sure. Thanks, Will. It's such a pleasure to be here and such a fun opportunity to get to talk with so many amazing school leaders. I think you've got it pretty well there. I started out as an educator and then went down a really entrepreneurial path in my life. I fell in love with technology, and then I fell in love with the idea of really starting to connect great teams and for high performance. How to take folks who are really new and young in their roles and in their jobs and help them grow as leaders in organizations. How to instead of worrying about how are we going to recruit all of these people in these certain roles, how to grow people into those roles. And so I became really passionate about that idea of employee engagement and employee well-being, because if you don't have employees who feel great at work, then they can't grow and engage. So I became really passionate about that a few years ago, and then when it came time to start something new and start something of my own, I wanted it to be an employee engagement, and I knew I wanted it to be in the space of education, and Alpaca is what resulted.
Well, you are sitting in Omaha, Nebraska today, and right
Yep.
behind you, for those of my listeners who can't see what I get to see, you've got the supplies and delight, your workshop that you
Yep.
guys are sitting in today. It's such a beautiful space.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, we love to be an in-person team. We love our space where we get to work together every day.
So before I delve into ways that leaders can be listening to their teachers and the ways that you guys have just so learned so much about supporting schools, tell
Hmm.
us your origin story. I'd love to know more. I would love listeners to know more about the origin story of Alpaca and how you decided to support schools and what motivated you and why you chose that name.
Yeah, we get that. That's probably our number one question is why is it named this? So I'll tell you the story. Like I said, when I was in a role in employee engagement technology company, and I knew it just kind of in the sort of post-pandemic world, I knew I was ready to start a company of my own, and I knew I wanted it to be in support of educators, and I knew I wanted it to be in support of educators in their jobs and in school as a workplace, because workplaces are something I care really deeply about. We all spend a lot of our time in our workplaces, and so it should feel wonderful every day when we go there. I'm a parent of three kids, and as a parent, you really sacrifice a lot of your time in the world for the privilege of working. Right. So for the privilege of working, you give up time with these wonderful kids and babies along the way. And so that work should feel amazing. That work should feel extraordinary. And I really have believed that since the day my daughter was born 17 and a half years ago. So I've definitely always believed that. And so I knew I wanted to start a company, and I knew I wanted it to be in this space, but I really didn't know very much about what it felt like to be an employee of a school. I didn't know what it felt like to be an educator, as far as being as far as what the work experience of what that was like. So when I decided I wanted to start something new and I didn't know quite what it looked like, I just started taking coffee to teachers after school. Any teacher I knew, and then any teacher they would introduce me to, and then any teacher they would introduce me to. But I found that it was pretty easy for people to say yes as soon as I promised coffee or a Diet Coke after school. So I did that, and I just started going to school. And you know what? It was kind of late 2021, and it was a time where I was the first adult that had stepped foot in a lot of educators' classrooms for a long time. There hadn't been very many people really joining together. So I just spent a lot of time asking teachers about their day and about their job and about their work, what kept them up at night, what stuff they were really proud of. I asked them about their classrooms and how they created these beautiful spaces. You mentioned our space, and we care deeply about our space, and we found that teachers care deeply about their spaces too. And we also found that teachers, at the moment, one of the things that felt like a really simple, easy bit of low hanging fruit from the perspective of an educator's workday was that we kind of got the little comment all the time. It was kind of this offhand comment of like, oh yeah, I bought all of those things. I bought that. I made that. I did that. I made that on the weekend. My husband made that for me this weekend. Those sorts of things. And so really early on, when we were trying to figure out how do we just improve the experience of being an educator as an employee, the easiest thing we could think to do is, what if we could just get some of this stuff that they're paying for out of pocket into people's hands easier, faster, with less expense for them. So we just started there. We were like, okay, if this is about expo markers, we can work on expo markers. So our very first model was like, was kind of like Stitch Fix for teachers. So it was a little subscription box, and it was, or a little subscription pack, and it was filled with supplies and well-being items and a handwritten thank you note and just some little lovely things that are things that teachers, sometimes have to replace often, things that are harder to get, good brands of well used items. So like the best brands of dry erase markers or of pencils or whatever, stuff that doesn't break. Because you know what, like when your kids' pencils break all day long, it takes away from your day as a teacher. So we said, okay, we can do that. We can handle that little tiny thing. And so we called it Alpaca because we had a friend who was like, well, if you're making packs and you're an education company, you really should have a mascot. And so we say Alpaca. So that's what we named it. We said, okay, this way we get a cute mascot out of the deal. We called it Alpaca, and we called our very first product Alpaca Packs. And they were initially purchased by families and parents and community members, churches, PTOs, and then also schools and districts. And then as we kind of went along, we found that the most equitable way to get them into the hands of teachers was to really build great partnerships with schools and districts. And so we did that, and that's kind of how we got started.
Oh my gosh, Karen, what a great story. And there's so many things I love about that because, obviously, I'm a huge supporter of what Alpaca is doing, but I just want to pause for Principal Matters listeners here for a moment because the fact that you began first by listening, which is what we're titling this podcast
Yeah.
episode. You spent time finding out what are the things that teachers are already buying for themselves. What are
Hmm.
the spaces that they're creating that they want to be comfortable, delightful, inviting for their own students, but for themselves? And then how do we make that easier? How do we make that easier on leaders? And so which leads to my next question, because leaders
Yeah.
have lots of options for, and there's tons of companies out there that want to provide solutions. Some provide really good solutions, and some don't. So how would you coach a leader, or what would you say to a leader who wants to cut through all the noise of solutions and really build credibility and trust with their teachers and show them appreciation?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you already answered it. So, which is the best. Like I love it when it gets answered for me. So, I think the entire answer to that question is listening to teachers. So we have 5 core values at our company. They are really unorthodox in the way that we do our core values. Most people have core values like like inspiration and like perseverance and like things like that. And our 5 values are all actions because we have to remember always to be oriented to action. And our first core value is listen to teachers. And our second one is write thank you notes. Our third one is tell stories. Our fourth one is elevate every educator. And our fifth is bring out the best. But really, to us, it all starts, and in a lot of ways, it can all be done in one thing. And cutting through the noise for us is about one thing, which is listening to teachers. So even though I'm a person who provides solutions, I would say to any principal, if you're looking to cut out the noise, like stop listening to solutions and start listening to teachers. It's
Mm.
even though I'm a solution provider, I say that I think listening to what your teachers are saying that they feel, what they're saying that they need, what they're asking for, and then knowing that sometimes as a leader you can't provide every single thing your employees are asking for. That's true in education, but it's true in every workplace in the world. But being able to speak to that request, show that you're listening, and then come up with solutions that do work for your workplace is really can really be pretty magical and pretty transformative as far as how people feel at work, because it is both the act of listening and the act of supporting, but it all comes in one little tiny thing, which is just asking teachers how they're doing.
Okay, so I'm going to pause because
Yep.
all 5 of those values are so powerful. Listening to your teachers, writing them thank you notes, giving them that
Yep.
written feedback, not just that
Hmm.
verbal. telling stories,
Mm-hmm.
elevating voices, and then bringing out the best in others. I want to come back to number
Mm-hmm.
three.
Yeah.
Talk to me about why telling stories is such an important value for you guys.
Yeah. So I think part of feeling heard and part of feeling really listened to, I think a huge thing happens when you listen. I think an even bigger thing happens when teachers see and hear their stories told. So whether that's a little data story about how we're feeling at work this week, and these are the 10 words we're using to describe work, it can be really little, it can be really tiny, or it can be really big. One of the very first things we did as a company, we got a very lucky opportunity to help document and tell the story of a school, of the creation of a school. We had a school that was celebrating its 10th year anniversary, and they were tasked by their school board, a small independent school. They were tasked by their school board of writing a book or building a documentation about their story. And I happen to be a good writer, and we have a extraordinary photographer on our team, and we got the opportunity to write the story of this school together. And we got to interview every single teacher who had ever been there, and who was there at the start. We got to interview every office staff member. We got to interview parents, lunch ladies, like I mean, everyone, all across the team. We got kind of unfettered access to this school and to their story, and we wrote it. And what we found was that as soon as people were getting their photographs taken and their quotes in print and their story told, it was a sense of pride about that school that we have, like, I've never seen anything like it. And the leaders at the school were like, oh my gosh, we did not realize that this was going to happen when we told this story. And one of the last things we did for the book before we published it was we made sure every single person's name that had ever been associated with the school was in it, and that every single teacher who taught at the school right then, their image and their name was in it. And that I learned everything I need to know about telling stories that in that moment, because it was transformative for how people feel. Like when you see your stuff in print, like I always tell people, like, publish a magazine at the end of your year and tell the story of your year, because when you tell the story and people see their names and their quotes and their images in print, it makes a difference about how they feel about the place that they work.
Oh my gosh, Karen, you're just making my heart sing. And I'm just going to do a shameless plug. My second book, which was
Go
called
for it.
Messaging Matters, how to inspire students, motivate teachers, and lead your community. That whole book was just about how, as educators, we see so many things happening in our school on a daily basis that no one else gets an opportunity to see
Yes.
unless we tell the story. And when you tell the story, you're not just telling your story, you're telling their story. And when you tell the story of students and teachers and community members, it's contagious. When parents see the picture
Yeah.
of their child on a school website or in a print or in a newsletter or in a magazine, you know what they're going to do with it. They're going to share it with everybody they know. And so
Yeah.
multiply that across an entire community, like what you did with inviting an entire school community to tell its story, and you've built a brand. I mean, for lack of better, for that I'm just going to say
Yeah.
that you've helped them build a brand that gives them the opportunity to really be proud of what they're
Yeah.
doing.
You know, so I 100% agree with you. And so one of the things we listen to a lot of words that teachers say. Our survey uses that, and we know a lot about what teachers say, like in combination. And so when teachers tell us that they feel committed, which is pretty crucial if you're looking to keep your teachers, right? If when teachers tell us that they're committed, the other words that they use around that word committed, the other words that they use to describe work, are almost all words of belonging. And they're all words like accepted, uplifted, cared for, lifted up, these kinds of words. And they're all words around belonging. And what I think stories do, I think when you tell a story, you can't help but belong, right? Like everybody who's in that story belongs to that story. and because you've said so, because you've said their name, or because you've said their role, or because you told a story about their kid or their student, or their something cool that they did. So they belong to that story. Stories give us something to belong to. And when you belong to something, you feel differently about that thing. And so I think like stories do a huge amount of work for us when we can write them. And so it like, but more than anything, like they just give us something to belong to.
Well, your work is committed to, um, as one of your values says,
Mm-hmm.
elevating the
Yes.
voices and the outcomes of amazing teachers. So, Principal Matters listeners are going to be listening to this conversation as they're in the middle of summer or they're getting ready to begin a new
Yep.
school year. So, can you share some practical ways, some of your best tips or tricks, Karen, of ways that
Mm,
leaders, whether or not they partner with Alpaca or not, what can they be thinking about
yeah. Yeah.
about recognizing and celebrating their teachers?
Yeah. I think and there's a couple of things. Obviously, one is listening. But I think especially going into a new school year, there's this great opportunity to create a cadence for this, right? So to create
Mhm.
listening and supporting your educators as a cadence and as a habit of something that you just have in your system that you do all often on some cadence that makes sense for you as a leader. So there are leaders who have a cadence of checking in with their educators and listening and supporting every day in some different ways. There are some that do it, once a week. That on certain days they walk and the building, or on certain days they greet all families at the door when they're coming in, or on certain days they make sure to just ask personally, how are you doing, to a few teachers in the building. We've seen so many cool different ways of doing this. We do, obviously Alpaca is kind of about that. So we help our leaders do a once a month pulse survey. So instead of just doing, somebody explained it to me the other day of like your climate and culture survey that you do once or twice a year. It's like your summative, and Alpaca is like the formative. Like you get like a once a week or once a month little check in with your educators on a cadence, so that you get some information back quickly, you act on it, you tell people you act on it, and then you do it again. And I think when you're coming into your school year, it's almost like New Year's resolutions, right? Which are, of course, my favorite time of year. But a new school year kind of gives you the opportunity to set up this a cadence of like, okay, I'm not going to like try to do teacher recognition sometimes, or I'm not going to try to do a survey here and there. That it's like, oh, I'm going to actually put it on my calendar. I'm going to put it on my calendar that, on the third Thursday of every month, I'm going to do a check-in with my educators to really make sure I'm listening to them. And on the first Monday of every month, I'm going to give them a readout about what I know about how they're doing and what we're working on as a team. It kind of gives you the opportunity to do that. And so cadence is I think the biggest thing that you can do, because I don't think that most school culture and most team cultures generally are ever driven by a single act. They're never driven by Teacher Appreciation Week. Like teachers don't feel appreciated because of Teacher Appreciation Week. We always like to say like Teacher Appreciation Week is 1 week and Alpaca is here for the other 51. So like and the idea is that it's like you don't create great culture in one single act ever. Culture is made up of all of our habits and all of our choices repeated. And so the
Mm.
repeated part is the part that matters. And so figuring out or setting up your year to say, like, here are the choices I want to repeat over and over and over this year, and feeling intentional about that, creating some rewards for yourself as a leader when you maintain that cadence, I think are all really cool ways to kind of set up your year for this.
Oh, I love that. So, Principal Matters listeners have heard me say this before, but we value what we schedule. And
Yeah,
so, if I look at your calendar, and for most leaders stepping into a new year, they're thinking about everything. Parent conferences are
right.
going to be on their calendars, activities are going to be on their calendars, fire drills are going to be on their calendars. Um, some leaders, and this was me, I encourage leaders to start place your classroom visits, your observations, your
Hmm.
evaluations, all those things that you know are important priorities, get them on there early
Yep.
because there will be fires that you're going to be putting out.
Yep.
And what I love about what you're saying, Karen, is put on your calendar the feedback cycles that you're going to be creating, the
Mm,
cadence that you're going to
yes.
be creating for listening to your teachers, for getting feedback from them, for supporting them, for celebrating them, and then rinse and repeat. How can you keep that
Yes.
going throughout an entire year, not just 1 week of the year, but
Yeah.
through an entire year?
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I have a couple more questions before we
Yeah.
wrap up, but and I don't want to rob you of anything additional that you
Mm.
wanted to add there. So anything you wanted to add to that before I move forward?
No, I think you're exactly right. I think you are like we are what we schedule. I actually just heard an administrator the other day say that like your culture is made up of what you celebrate. And so like if the only thing we celebrate is like our test scores or our student outcomes, then that is what our culture is made of. And so I think being really like thoughtful about what is the culture that I want? What are the 5 words I want our employees to say when they talk about their jobs with us,
Mhm.
and then how do we get to those words? What are the things that we need to celebrate or do or repeat in order to get to those? I think is it's honestly kind of a fun exercise to do. It's a thing to try overall, just as you're kind of getting ready for the school year.
I love that. So you do a lot of, you guys are a team and you support
Hmm.
schools all over the country. And Karen, um, in the full work that I do now that I'm consulting and supporting schools, I'm just curious, what are the ways that Alpaca, how are you guys applying these same lessons in, even in the work that you're doing with you, with yourself, with your teams and in your own company?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the first thing we do is we use our own product. So one of the biggest things we do at Alpaca is our Alpaca Pulse, which is a really quick once a month check in with educators to ask how they're doing. It asks 3 questions: How are you doing? What do you need right now? And what else would you like to share? When it asks how are you doing, it asks it. We don't do any 1 to 5 scales. We don't like them. We're kind of allergic to Likert scales at our
Mhm.
place. And so we instead use what we call a semantic scale. So we use real words. We produce a really fun kind of display of words, and you choose the words that apply to how you feel at work right now. All of them are the same color and the same size. They're all neutral because every word should be okay to say about work. And you can pick as many as you want. So we actually run that survey every single Monday morning at our office before our staff meeting. And it's the very first thing that we talk about at our staff meeting is, I kind of read it back and say, okay, here's what I'm hearing and seeing about the words we're using at work. Here's what's changing. Here's what I'm seeing a little bit more of. I mean, I'm seeing or hearing a little bit more fatigue. I'm seeing and hearing a lot more motivation, whether it's positive or negative. I kind of read it out at the beginning of our staff meeting every Monday, and that's been a really, really positive experience for our whole team. So we do that as kind of part of what we do. And then the other thing that we do is, we tell people when they're hired, and we try to reinforce it very often. Those 5 values that I mentioned, if you're doing at least one, if the work that you're doing doesn't connect to one of those 5 values every day, you might not be doing the right work. So let's
Mm.
talk about what you need to be doing in order to live one of those values. So I often come into the office and people are writing thank you notes to teachers. We put thank you notes in every single care package. So we've written, I think, like 65,000 plus handwritten thank you notes in our company. So we have team members writing thank you notes when you walk in. We have some of our team members actually substitute teach one day a week, or once every couple of weeks. We love that. That's time with customers. That's time listening to teachers. That's time kind of really being with our core customer. We see people, doing really, really cool things around listening. We do calls with our customers constantly to hear how they're using our products and what they're doing and what they're experiencing. So we really try to just sit and listen, like live those values every single day. And it's one of the things I ask in one-on-ones with our team is like how are we living our values, and what do we need to do to help you live our values even more.
Wow. Okay, Karen, I'm just taking notes feverishly because there's so much here that I want to apply. So much of the work that I do with leaders, so many times people will reach out to me because they have questions about time management or about
Mm.
how to prioritize or how to not let the urgent take them away from the important. I have a
Oh,
list of questions that I like to have
it's a good
leaders
one.
think through with their teams, which is, questions like, what am I supposed to be working on? Um, why am I not working on that right now?
Uh-huh.
Um, what commitments have I made that I need to follow up on? And how
Mm-hmm.
can we help and how can we help each other? So those
Mm,
are kind of but those are very
those are great.
work-centered questions. What I love about what you're adding here is, yeah, Will, those are great for task completions, but let's also think about the heart of what we're doing too.
Mm,
And so how are you doing? What do you need? And what else do you want me to know? Man,
yeah.
that opens that door up so wide for really getting the feedback of what's going on with the culture temperature of what's going on with the emotional temperature of your school too.
Yeah, one of the very first questions people always ask us before they start working with us is, "Can I add a couple of questions to the survey?" And one of the we always say, "Give it 2 months and see what you get from these three questions,"
Hmm.
because when it's
Um,
anonymous and when it's so open ended in that way, and when you use real words instead of a lot of scores, you get very, very rich information very, very quickly about how people are actually what they actually need. And when you get it really quickly, I mean, this is the thing that we have found and that we say all the time. I actually just had a school leader the other day who said, "Okay, I have to admit something to you. I haven't done my survey in 2 months." And I said, "Okay, why?" And she said, "I didn't like the answers 3 months ago." And she said, "I don't know what to do about it. I don't know how I don't know how to do it. I don't like to see some of those words if they come in and they're negative." And I said, the very best thing that you can do is keep doing it, because the more you do it, the more you'll learn that some of those words that you'll hear are actually, they were just a bad day. They were just a little blip on the radar. They were just a little moment that somebody was having. And if they do show up month over month, those are trends that you really want to listen to. And that's again, like part of like noise, like listening and knowing what stuff is noise and what stuff is really important. But I think the idea of like, that's why we are such a huge like proponent of cadence and why we're such a proponent of listening really often, is because the more you listen and the more you hear feedback, the easier it is to hear feedback. We hear this from principals all the time. And once they're doing that, and once they're accustomed to, okay, I'm always going to have a little bit of a mixed bag. There's always going to be a couple things. There's always going to be a couple of comments in here, but listening really often actually makes listening easier, and it makes
mhm.
acting easier. And that's the thing that I think we probably hear the most questions about, but we also see the most growth, honestly, in principals as leaders. We hear principals say to us all the time, they're like, "I think I might be getting better at this leadership thing because I can handle now a couple of negative words each month and I couldn't a few months ago." And that's really that's what we're after.
Oh my gosh, Karen, that's so wise. Well, Principal Matters listeners, you can tell why Alpaca has been um, an organization that I have been proud to introduce listeners to because, Karen, the work you guys do is just so thoughtful. It's more than just great resources, great surveys, great beautiful things that teachers can hold in their hands and supplies that they can use in their classrooms. You are truly inspiring stronger cultures. And I'm just going to go back to something you said at the very beginning of this entire conversation, which is we give up a lot of our lives for the privilege of work. How do we create amazing, delightful spaces for the people that are going to be with us every single day? So as we wrap up, how can listeners stay connected with you, and any parting words you want to leave with them?
Oh, sure. Well, you can always find this on our website. That's it. Just getalpaca.com. And there's an enormous library of free resources for principals and school leaders there on just really fun, cool ways to drive school culture. And those are 100% free all the time. So please join us over there, and we'd love to hear from you. You can find me on LinkedIn. My name's Karen Borchert, and you can always find me at Karen at getalpaca.com. I answer all my own email for sure. So always super excited to connect.
Well, Karen, we will put a link to your resources and to you in the show notes. But thank you so
Cool.
much for the ways that you are transforming school cultures across the world. And Principal Matters listeners, thank you for the time you've taken today to listen and to learn, and for the commitment that you're going to be making to listening to your teachers. Until next time, thanks for doing what matters. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Principal Matters.